Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. So today we're sitting down and we are doing another would I repurchase these palettes. I'm pretty sure this is the fourth one of these videos that I have done in the past. I have a stack of 10 palettes here I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to tell you if for some reason these got lost, stolen, broken, anything like that, they were gone from my collection, would I repurchase them or not? Before we get started, if you like this video while you're watching it, please go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. It really does help my channel out. And other than that, if you're excited and you want to hear about would I repurchase these palettes, let's go ahead and get started. This may be my new permanent background, at least for the next couple of months while I am super pregnant. I am 33 weeks pregnant, almost 33 and a half weeks pregnant. And a girl is tired all the time. And so it's really hard for me to like move that table around and like resituate my room. So this might be my new permanent background for both Get Ready With Me's and Talk Through videos for a while. I don't think forever. I actually like this background more, like my talk through background of my desk being back there and all that. I like that more. I think it's just cuter, but yeah, I just don't have the energy to do that currently, so I'm so sorry about that. This video idea was originally created, I'm pretty sure, by Dolly Mama. So I'm gonna have her channel linked down below for you guys to check out. Also, if you're curious about this makeup look right here, I did go ahead and do a first impressions, swatching, eye look, all of that, of the new Pat McGrath Love collection, the Iconic Infatuation. It was the only thing I picked up from that collection, but it was the new eyeshadow palette that I wanted to test out for you guys. And that video should have been the one I put up right before this one. So if you missed it, I will have it linked in the eye and down below for you. But like I said, I have 10 palettes here. I am not going to lie. Quite a few of these as I was picking them and choosing them to include in this video, quite a few of them I would not repurchase. So this video might be a little bit negative per se, but I like to do them and I really like to come on and tell you the truth, whether it's positive or negative about something, because that way, if you have your eye on any of these palettes, you know my thoughts behind them, if I would repurchase them or not, because there's so much makeup out there, it's very overwhelming, and a lot of times you just buy something kind of on a whim, and then you don't end up using it as much as you thought, or liking it as much as you thought, and then like, I wouldn't repurchase it, you know what I mean? So I'm gonna be completely honest with you guys when talking about these palettes, and a lot of them I wouldn't, but I just feel like that's super helpful, even if it's kind of negative, you know what I mean? I'm also gonna have my other 3 videos linked down below for you to check out in case you wanna see me talking about more palettes I would repurchase, or not. But let's start off on a positive note and talk about one that I would repurchase, that I really do love with my whole heart, and that is the Natasha Denona Glam face palette. Technically, this is a face palette, so it has a cream blush and a powder highlight, but I'm including it in this because it does have these 5 eyeshadows as well, so I consider this an eyeshadow palette, and I keep it with my eyeshadow palettes. I love this palette. I really do. Not gonna lie, I don't use the cream blush ever. The highlight is pretty, not my favorite. If I reach into this palette, I will dabble in this highlight, but I don't pull this palette out to use this highlight. But these 5 eyeshadows here at the bottom are so good. The mattes are really beautiful and smooth and blendable. They don't get super patchy on me. But these 2 shimmers are some of the most impactful shimmers I feel like I've ever seen, especially from Natasha Denona. They are just so reflective and beautiful on the eye. Like, look at that. That is so, that's like liquid gold on my hand here. I will say there's quite a bit of fallout. So like, you have to be careful. I would definitely do your eyes first, use some glitter primer, and even doing both those things, I still get kind of fallout from these shades, but they're so impactful on the eyelid that I put up with it and I don't even care. So yes, I would 1,000,000% repurchase this. I think it's absolutely stunning. All right, next up we have the Colourpop In the Limelight palette. I want to preface this by saying that I think this palette is stunning. Like, truly, the color story of it is really beautiful. It's fairly unique in my collection. I don't have a ton of these shades. However, I don't think I would repurchase this because the quality of it wasn't as good as I was anticipating. The mattes are honestly a little bit sheer. You have to really, really build them up. And if I'm buying a color story that is this bright and impactful, I personally want that pigmentation. Now, you might be looking at this and you might like that it's a little bit on the sheer side. It could be something that you would enjoy about this palette, but for me, I want that full opacity, and I don't fully get that from these mattes. And then even the shimmers are a little bit lackluster. Are they pretty? Sure, but they are just a little bit more sheer, kind of like the mattes, and I don't know, feel like if I'm gonna reach for a bright green palette like this, I would rather reach for my BH Cosmetics Avocado Toast. Little bit different color story and shades offered in the BH palette, but for me, this one just didn't live up to my expectations, so I would not repurchase this one. Sticking with Colourpop, this next palette was sent to me in PR, but I would repurchase it actually. It's just this little baby quad right here. This is their On the Mango quad. I'm not gonna lie, I don't think these are available anymore, which is such a bummer because this is beautiful. I know Colourpop is really bad, in my opinion, about releasing tons and tons of things, and then sometimes they're just not available after like a month. And I don't think this one is available like I was stating. If it is still on their website, I will link it down below. I'll try to link all of these down below if they're available. But if not, I'm so sorry I'm talking about it. And I'm about to talk really highly about it because I love this quad. It is bright, it is bold, it is orange. It's not for the faint of heart. But if that is what you're going for, this is absolutely stunning. These mattes are very pigmented and impactful on the eyelid. And then even though there's one shimmer, it just is perfect. You're not going to get variety out of this, like you're gonna get pretty much the same look each time. Although I will say all three of these mattes hold their own. They don't look the same on the eye at all. Let me do some swatches. So as you can see, all three of the mattes really do look different. They're not going to show up the same on your eye, which I definitely prefer, especially in a palette this tiny, because if you only have 4 shades and then like 2 of the 4 look the same on your eye, it's kind of a waste. But these do all look different. And then that shimmer, I'm not gonna lie, the swatch is not doing it justice. It is very beautiful and impactful and just shimmery and glimmery on your lid whenever you use it. So like I said, you're not gonna get a ton of different looks out of this palette, but you're gonna get a really bright, bold, beautiful, orange, summery, springy, stunning look. All right, this next palette is a cult classic that's been around for literally almost a decade at this point, and it might surprise some of you guys that I would not repurchase this, and it is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. Do I think this palette is beautiful? Yes. Now, I want to say that I did not pick this up when it first launched back in like 2016, 2017, when the craze of this palette was at its height, at its peak. That's not when I bought this palette. I bought this palette a couple years ago. I want to say in 2019 or 2020, probably 2020 at this point. So had I purchased it and used it when it was the most popular palette on the planet and you could not escape it, I would maybe have different feelings about it. But for me, I just don't love this palette. When I use it, I do get pretty looks, but I feel like there's a lot of repeat shades. I think these two are just way too similar. This whole quad up in here ends up looking pretty similar on my eyes. We definitely didn't need all 4 of them. These two like pinky sort of rosy shades also look pretty much the same on the eyes, and there's really only 2 impactful shimmers in this palette, which for me, I like more shimmer options. So I understand why this palette was so popular at the time. It was kind of the first time, other than the Urban Decay Naked palette, that like a palette was super popular back in 2016 or 2017, but now in 2023, if I lost this palette out of my collection, I wouldn't take my money and repurchase it. I just don't use it enough. Another one that's pretty popular that I feel like might surprise some of you guys, but I don't dislike it, but I wouldn't rebuy it. It is the Viseart Cashmere palette. This one is honestly the color story for me. Modern Renaissance, I like the color story. This one is confusing to me. All of the mattes are pretty deep and dark. So you have this brown, this like rosy color, and this really deep brown, almost black shade. The only one that's a little bit lighter is this tan one right here, but this doesn't show up on its own on my eyelid. I like to go in with a transition shade, and I kind of don't really have a transition shade in this palette unless I take this one and mix it with these other ones, which I just don't really love to do that. Also, Viseart's formulation, I don't want to say it's overhyped, but in my experience, I feel like it might be a little bit overhyped because the mattes are just they're just like mattes to me. You know what I mean? Like they're not the best mattes I've ever used in my life. And then these shimmers, they're pretty, but they're just a little lackluster on the lid. I do think that that's Viseart's kind of forte, especially in these older palettes. I think this one's been around for a couple years, that their shimmers are more like everyday wearable. They're not going to be like wham bam thank you ma'am. I personally like that. And while they're pretty, they're just like, I don't know. I'm just really not that impressed with this palette. And again, it's more the color story. But that doesn't mean I don't want to try more from Viseart. Like this palette doesn't sway me or deter me from wanting to buy more. So I'm sure I will in the future, and I'm sure I'll like those other palettes better. All right, let's go back to being on a positive note for a hot second, and we're gonna talk about the Natasha Denona Mini Gold palette. This one I would rebuy. I love this palette. I actually really love almost every Natasha Denona mini palette that I own from her. I think the quality is great. I think the amount of shadows you get for the price is really awesome, especially for Natasha Denona, and this palette is beautiful. I will say the only downside about this is I use the same shades and do pretty much the same look every time I use this palette. Now, that is definitely a me thing. You can have a little bit of versatility with this, but I just love that like greeny, dark, smoky look that I get with this so much that I just pretty much make it every single time. I put this in the crease, this in the crease, and then usually this on the lid. I don't dabble in these two shades too often, definitely not this one. The gold I use every once in a while, but that, again, that's more of a me problem. You can come up with other looks. But like I said, the quality is just really beautiful. This green shimmer is so impactful and dimensional on the eyelid. It just provides a really beautiful green smoky sort of look. I love using this at the holidays, and her minis are only $27. And then if you can get them on sale during the Sephora sale, even better. So love this, would repurchase. Okay, this next one. I don't know. I don't know if I would rebuy this one or not. I don't think so though. And it's a Pat McGrath Moonlit Seduction palette. This is her newest mothership that came out this past summer. I feel like the reason why I wouldn't rebuy this is because I just don't use this as much as I should for how much dang money I spent on this palette. I mean, these palettes are expensive. They're like $125. I only got the 10% off when it very first launched. And that's the only time I've ever spent that much money on a mothership. Usually I get them like 30-40% off on her sales because Pat McGrath is good about having sales on her website. So the fact that I like didn't wait and get this one on more of a discount just really bums me out. So if I did rebuy it, I would only repurchase it on sale like 30-40% off. Is this palette pretty? Yes. Do I like the looks when I use it? Yes. But I just don't reach for it hardly ever. When I bought this, I thought it was going to be like my new favorite and I was going to use it every single solitary day. And that just hasn't been the case, sadly. I think it's stunning and it's good quality and I need to reach for it more. But just the fact of how much it costs and how little I use it, I don't think I'd rebuy it. I really don't. Alright, for the last couple palettes, we're going to go back and forth between I would, I wouldn't, and I would. The next one I would repurchase is the Laura Lee Los Angeles Nudie No. 2 palette. This is a beautiful palette. I absolutely love this palette. The quality, the color story, how it looks on my eyes, the eye looks that I make with it. There's been times where I've gone back and needed to like rewatch a video for a reason or look back at pictures that I've taken that I use this palette. And every single time I'm like, what did I use on my eyes? My eyeshadow looks beautiful that day. And it's always this palette. I just think this is beautiful and definitely underrated. When you look at it, it's not a revolutionary color story. Like you probably have all of these shades in other palettes, but just something about them all curated together is just really, really beautiful. And these two like more toppery sort of shades that she has in here are just stunning on the eyes. They look wet and impactful and just dimensional. All the other mattes blend beautifully as well. You can really deepen and smoke it out with this shade right here. The other shimmers are pretty too, but these two are definitely my favorite. I do think this is underrated and I do think that it needs more love and I would rebuy it. It's so good. One I wouldn't though is Laura's Best Friend. This one right here from Lunar Beauty. This is Manny MUA's brand. This is the Eternal Eclipse palette. I got this in a mystery box, so I didn't pick this one out myself. And if I was on his website and I was going to buy a palette, this wouldn't have been the one that I chose. He has other color stories that I think would just fit my makeup aesthetic a little bit better. But again, I got this in a mystery box. I wouldn't repurchase this, but it's not because of the quality. It's actually a really stunning palette. The mattes here in this middle row are really, really beautiful. And then all the rest, I guess not all the rest, because these are mattes too, but all the other shimmers are impactful. They're really pretty on the eyelid. It's just a color story for me. I never reach for this palette. I want to say I've used it like 3 times since I bought it in that mystery box, which is a bummer. But when I look at this palette, I'm just a little, I wouldn't say I'm confused on what eye looks to make. I just am not really inspired by the shades. I don't really ever reach for these like dark smoky blue shades down here. This is like just typical mattes that I have in a ton of other palettes. And while these shimmers up here are pretty, I just don't really reach for them, especially these two that are like super gold down here. This one's pretty gold. These are like silver and bright. So again, it's just more the color story. They're just not shades I wear very often, but I do want to try more from Lunar Beauty because again, the quality is beautiful. And if it was a color story I would use more often, I would be definitely intrigued to try that. And last but not least, we're ending it strong with a palette I would repurchase if I can, because I actually don't know if this one's still available or not, but it's the BH Cosmetics Smitten in Switzerland palette. I love this palette. I truly do. I think the color story on this is so beautiful and unique. It's got pretty much everything you would want for a more like wintry fall sort of eyeshadow palette. I don't really reach for this one much in the spring and summer just because of the shades. But whenever I do reach for this palette, I absolutely love my looks. I've done a 1 week 1 palette on it. I can have linked down below for you to check out. So I made 5 different looks with it. And you can tell from this color story, this is a really versatile palette. You can make 5 very different, distinct looks, which is perfect. That's like the kind of palette I want in my collection because it is so versatile. You can use it a million times over and always get a different eye look. Plus the BH Cosmetics formulation used to be really lovely. I know they got bought out by Makeup Revolution, so I'm not sure. I haven't tried anything new from them, but if you can find this on sale at like TJ Maxx or anything, I would definitely snag it. So yeah, I would 1,000,000% rebuy this. I love this palette. I would be so sad if something happened to it and it disappeared and I didn't have it in my collection anymore. And I actually need to pull it out and use it again really soon. I haven't in a while and I'm looking down at it and that's making me sad because it's so pretty and I'm like, I miss you. I need to use you again soon. And as you guys, that was 10 palettes and if I would repurchase them or not. I'm not gonna lie, I talked at the beginning of this about how this was gonna be a super negative video because a lot of them I wouldn't repurchase, but it ended up being 50-50. 5 I would repurchase and 5 I wouldn't. So I guess that's not as negative as I thought it was going to be. But yeah, those are my thoughts on all those palettes. If for some reason they disappeared, would I take the time and my hard-earned money to rebuy them? Let me know down below in the comments. Do you own any of these? And do you agree with me or not? I love hearing from you guys down below in the comments. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. You're awesome and I love you. Please subscribe if you have not yet and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye guys.